Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you that don't know, my name is Anu Joshi and I'm a real estate broker based in Toronto and the GTA. This video is going to be one part of a four-part series that's going to be focused on our provincial elections happening here in Ontario on June 2nd, 2022. And what I'm going to be doing is distilling the housing platforms and discussing the housing policies that each of these parties have. Obviously, we live in a democratic state. It's extremely important for everyone that's eligible to vote to go ahead and vote. I've already voted. Today, when I'm filming this, it's on May 26th, so I've already voted in early voting in the advanced polls. If you haven't already, please go ahead and do that. And before you go ahead and cast your vote, either in advanced voting or at the actual election on June 2nd, take some time to familiarize yourself with the parties, with their platforms, with what they stand for. I'm not gonna get too political and talk too much about the broad spectrum things, but with my background in real estate and my degree in political science, I do want to hone in on and explain to you the different housing policies that these parties are proposing. So first up, I'm going to be talking about the Ontario PC party, which is currently led by Doug Ford, who is our current premier. And we're doing that first because their platform is a little bit different. They don't have an explicit housing platform or election promises. Rather, we're going to be looking at the Ontario budget that they released, and that was released last month, or 2 months ago actually, in March 2022. And so I'm going to be taking you through that to learn a little bit more about what their housing platform is. It's not exactly an election platform, but the budget is really, the document is what tells us what this government is planning to do in terms of housing. So let's get started. First and foremost, we know that in the 2022 Ontario budget that the Ontario PCs released, they had several important issues that they covered. Housing was certainly one of them, with prices of housing skyrocketing in Toronto, in the Greater Toronto area, and in other pockets of Ontario. Prices are going up everywhere, right? Inflation is up. The Bank of Canada is raising the rate, but still prices are not coming down. Gas prices are up. Cost of living is up. And so the main topics that they actually talked about in the Ontario budget were housing, transportation, groceries, childcare, and electricity. A lot of it having to do with the cost of living in Ontario being way too high. One of the important things that came out of the budget as it relates to housing policy was the Ontario government's response to the Housing Affordability Task Force. So this was a task force that came into effect, I believe, several months ago, and they were tasked with speaking to stakeholders, speaking to the public, and coming up with potential solutions and things that they could do to help fix Ontario's housing problem. And we certainly have one. So for anyone that thinks that we don't have a housing problem, I'm sorry. Look at what's happening in the market. Talk to your neighbors, talk to people that are trying to get into the market, first-time buyers and millennials, and you will clearly see that we certainly have a housing problem. But let's not get too much into that. The Housing Affordability Task Force was responsible for coming up with solutions, with creative solutions and recommendations as to how we can fix a problem that we have here in Ontario. And in response to that, one of the main targets that came out of that was a target of 1.5 million new homes over the next 10 years in Ontario. So the Ontario PC government has said that they're going to be releasing a long-term plan, a specific long-term plan every single year for the next few years, to share exactly what they're going to be doing that year and the following year to be able to move this along and achieve the proposed target of 1.5 million homes in 10 years. One of the things that the government wants to do is to get homes built faster, right? 1.5 million homes is not a small target, it's huge, but we need that to fulfill the demand that we have here in Ontario. And so the government's plan to get more homes built faster includes reducing red tape to create more homes, making it easier to build community housing, and consumer protections that actually protect home buyers, homeowners, and renters. First up, in terms of reducing red tape to build more homes, the government has said that they're going to be doing a couple of different things that would help reduce red tape and the sort of bureaucratic maze that people have to go through, right, to get more housing built. One is accelerating community infrastructure and housing. So the government's planning to introduce a new tool to help municipalities accelerate their planning process, the Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator, would streamline approvals that regulate the use of land and the location, use, height, size, and spacing of the buildings. So starting to automate these things so that municipalities can actually get approvals done faster. I know from both personal experience and professional experience that when you put in an application, it takes months, sometimes years to get that application through the municipal government and through all of the red tape. So definitely accelerating that, accelerating approvals is definitely going to help unlock more housing options. Right? So the government, the Ontario PC government is saying that they're going to be investing more than $45 million for a new streamlined development approval fund to help Ontario's 39 largest municipalities modernize, streamline, and accelerate processes for managing and approving housing applications. So really helping, the province helping various cities in Ontario to speed up this approvals process to get more homes built faster. The other thing that they also said that they're going to do is modernizing municipal services. So municipal partners provide important public services, and the government's committed to helping them improve these services to ensure that all the taxpayers in the various municipalities are getting great value for their money. The government is investing more than $23 million through the Audit and Accountability Fund to help large municipalities find better and more efficient ways to operate and to support initiatives that increase digital services, modernize operations, and integrate and streamline services. So a lot of this has to do with, again, management at the municipal level, whether it's management of communities and services that they're able to offer communities, right? Because when it comes down to housing policy, it's not just about how many homes are being constructed. It's how communities are being managed. It's how infrastructure is coming into those communities, right? A family that buys a home is not just buying that home, they're buying into that neighborhood. Is there grocery stores nearby? Are there schools for the kids? Are there bus routes established? Someone that dual income household that only has one vehicle, the other partner can actually take transit, drop off their kid at a local daycare or at a local school, and then find their way to work, right, using public transit. So all of these things do factor into it, right? It's the community aspect. Housing policy is about a lot more than just building new homes. Absolutely, it is about that. Supply is a huge issue. Supply of the right type of homes is a huge issue, but it seems to be that this part of the Ontario budget is focusing on, overall modernization of municipal services and helping speed up approvals for homes. One more thing that they've talked about is providing additional resources to reduce the backlogs at the Ontario Land Tribunal. So the Land Tribunal, it plays a part, it's an impartial adjudicator, which resolves land disputes, so between co-owners or between like land access and all that jazz. Effectively what it's going to do is any land that's currently disputed, whether a builder has it or a builder's trying to buy it or the government's trying to sell it, whatever it might be, sorry, not the government, it only addresses like public issues, I believe. But there is a huge backlog. So Ontario has said that they're going to be investing $19.2 million over 3 years to help reduce backlogs at the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the funding will allow them to hire more full-time adjudicators and increase the processes and timelines for mediation and everything, and to help resolve all these land use issues. It also mentions here that tenant and landlord disputes are also included in this. However, as far as I know, Ontario Land Tribunal does not deal with tenant and landlord disputes. That would be the Landlord and Tenant Board of Ontario. I'm not sure if it's under the same umbrella, but that's also a huge issue, right? In terms of issues for tenants, issues for landlords. Going to the LTB has been very difficult. There's backlogs there as well. Certainly needs more funding from the province to be able to expedite those, both the complaints process and the evictions process and whatever it is. Just having cases heard, right? I'm not going to comment on what the cases are or who's right and who's wrong and all of that. But just having the cases heard, we have to have enough of a system and enough, manpower to hear those cases and to adjudicate on them. Another thing that the Ontario government has said that in their budget that they want to do is support the use of municipal vacant home taxes. So for those of you that don't know, vacant home tax is something that recently came into effect in Toronto. I think it's going to be applicable as of the next calendar year. I'm not 100% sure, but basically it is a tax that if your home is sitting empty, your home or condo is sitting empty for a certain number of days in the year, you do have to pay a tax on it. And the point of this tax, which is similar to the one that they did in Vancouver, the point of this tax is to ensure that those homes that are sitting empty, if any, come onto the market. So either they're rented out, they come onto the rental market, or they're sold, right? And somebody buys it and then occupies it as a principal residence. The city of Toronto doesn't want investors or, like builders just holding properties and just having them vacant for no reason. So that's why the city of Toronto has instituted this vacant home tax, and Ontario has said that they are going to be, they're going to be supporting them. They would be prepared to facilitate, rather, which I think is quite interesting. The other thing that they also want to do is that the homes in Ontario and all of Ontario housing, the priority should be given to Ontario home buyers and family and not foreign speculators. So the government increased the non-resident speculation tax to 20%, expanded the tax beyond the Greater Golden Horseshoe region, and now it applies completely province-wide, which was a pretty big move. At the end of the day, though, you do have to take into account, and I don't have the exact numbers, but foreign ownership in Ontario is actually quite low, right? Compared to numbers, and again, I don't have the numbers offhand. This is just based off of discussion that I've heard over the years and articles that I've read over the years. As far as I know, foreign ownership was a pretty big issue in British Columbia, especially in Vancouver and the Greater Vancouver area. However, it's not as big as we think in Toronto. And the last statistic that I remember was probably pre-COVID, and I don't think it's gone up, right? Because we haven't had any travel during the pandemic. No new foreign bloods come into the country, so to say, to come up here and start buying properties, right? But before COVID, I believe that the ownership level for like foreign owners of Ontario real estate, I believe it was under 5%, which is a very, very small amount, right? So having the 15% tax, the non-resident speculation tax or the foreign buyers tax, having that being at 15% versus being at 20%, how many more people are you really deterring, right? Like the people that can afford to pay the 15% tax can also afford to pay the 20%. And the people that you're deterring by having a 15% foreign buyer tax, they're already deterred, right? Like they can't afford it. On $1 million home, they have to put up the 20% down payment, which is 200 grand plus 15% previously, which was 150,000. Now it's going to be 200,000, right? So the people that were going to do it anyways are still going to do it at 20%. But the most of the people that I think, were scared away from this 15% tax, I think are scared away even now, right? The small loophole, if you can call it that, of that tax previously only being applicable to the Greater Golden Horseshoe. So we're talking like GTA and GHA, like Greater Hamilton area as well. So that sort of bend across along Lake Ontario. Beyond that, for example, in Windsor and London, this tax was not applicable. So that was kind of a loophole. People were coming, you're still considered a foreign buyer if you're on a work permit or a student permit. Keep that in mind, right? Only citizens and PRs are considered Canadians. Everyone else is considered a foreign buyer. So even if someone's here on work permit, making good money, working, legally, or they're a student or whatever, and they want to buy a home, in places like Windsor and London that were outside the Greater Golden Horseshoe, you didn't have to pay a foreign buyer's tax. And so prices there were fairly stable still. Prices there have started going up, which I think is a natural effect post, the GTA prices booming and the GHA prices booming. Obviously, where you're going to go next, right? You go out in concentric circles. And so that's why I think the outer range was going up in price, not necessarily related to the number of foreign buyers that were active in the market. I don't think very many are. Again, I don't have the stats on that, but I don't think very many people are. But closing that sort of loophole and making it applicable to all across Ontario, I think was the more useful thing than going from 15% to 20%. But the government's going to do what the government's going to do, right? Right. I'm just scrolling through here in the budget again, the PC Ontario PC party budget, which was released in March. One of the notes that they have here, one of the last ones that they have in terms of housing policy, is that they're going to be cracking down on unethical developers. Now, this is a big discussion in the real estate industry. We've seen it in the news, projects taking, being released, taking deposits, holding them for about a year and a half, and then all of a sudden the project gets canceled, right? It happened in Vaughan with, I think, 2 or 3 different towers. It's happened in Richmond Hill with the townhouse development, and it does happen more frequently than you know, right? So I don't know how many of them are really unethical developers, whether they're doing it on purpose or if, they really just ran out of money. I don't know. So I won't talk too much about that. But as a part of consumer protection and having consumer protection at the forefront of the Ontario PC Party's budget or their housing plan that they released, the government plan is trying to better protect consumers when they buy a new home by holding new home builders and vendors to professional standards. So this will include increasing fines to address unethical behavior and enabling Tarion to extend the warranties on unfinished items in a new home. For example, well, I won't give any examples, but Tarion is basically the warranty provider, and new home builders do have to be registered with them. So do check that when you're doing pre-construction, which is a whole other, field of real estate. But cracking down on unethical developers through a discipline committee and increasing administrative penalties and things is something that the Ontario PC Party is going to be looking at doing, and to make sure that new home buyers are protected, right? Whether you're buying for investment or you're buying for living in it, you should be afforded certain protections as a consumer, and so that is something that they're talking about. So in general, it's kind of hard to dissect this document, right? It is cut into bite-sized pieces, but also, as most government documents go, they're not particularly clear. They don't have clear deliverables. Not everyone in the government knows what they're doing, contrary to popular belief. But my job is to go through it and distill it and help explain it to you as best as I can, and I hope that I have done that today. Once again, this video is a part of a 4-part series with the 4 major parties in the election for the provincial election in Ontario on June 2nd. This video was for the Ontario PC Party, which doesn't exactly have a platform, but we went through their March 2022 budget and the housing section of that budget to learn about what their plans are and what their housing policies are. I hope that this video was helpful to you. I know it did get a little long, but I wanted to make sure I got through all of the policy points. And if you thought this was helpful, please give it a thumbs up and make sure you share it with someone that would be interested to learn about it. And also do listen to the other videos as well. There's the other 3, Liberal Party, NDP, and Green Party, and I'll be sharing their housing platforms with you as well. Thank you once again for listening to this video to the very end. I do truly appreciate it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you on the next video.